I have here with me a very special guest. We're going to talk about trends now. We're gonna move it into numbers and statistics. I know my next guest. That's his wheelhouse. That's his world. That's what he likes to bathe in, right? That's he doesn't count sheep. He counts numbers and surveys at night. I'm making a lot of bad jokes right now. But anyway, he is the principal researcher for the State of the Industry, the 2023 State of the Specialty Food Industry Report. Lots of good stuff in there. He is David Lockwood. David, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Always a great friend of the Food Institute and SFA. You do so much for them. So, okay, let's start with the basics. Great report, huge thing that's coming out. Tell us about this report, the importance of it.
Yeah, so we have a tried and true methodology we've been doing for 20 years. So we will interview 1,600 consumers in the middle of the year. Right now, what we're just completing is market sizing, so we get all the track sales we can get. We estimate everything we can't get, which is a lot. So online sales, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, things like that, and come up with a market size, find out which categories are growing, which ones not, what's changed in the industry, and then most importantly, how are people in the industry reacting to that? Obviously, we've had nothing but change for the last 4 years. And so it's really, I base it all on numbers, but it comes down to what are people doing about those numbers that makes it exciting and useful, right?
And the report is available on specialtyfood.com. It has just been released. Tell us about the benefits of this report. What's the big draw here for people?
To me, the big draw is finding out what people are doing about these numbers, because the numbers aren't going to drive anything. It's how are retailers or distributors or makers reacting to the fact that inflation is up for the first time ever in a lot of people's lives. That's something to deal with.
Yes.
And there's many other things that are firsts. So learning about those firsts is one thing, but then what are people in the industry doing about it? That's the value of the report.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into the depth of the report. Let's talk categories. Which groups had growth? I saw in the report the plant-based dairy. Let's talk about that. Plant-based dairy, still looming large. Give us more specifics about that.
Yeah, so plant-based as a whole, if you've been just reading the general news, was like negative. It's been down.
Yeah.
And so there is that, but the industry is still growing. But what you don't see below the growth rate, which was 6.6% last year, not as high as it used to be, but high, is that there's a ton of innovation. It's so much excitement on the floor talking to plant-based companies and what they're doing. And the different routes to plant-based is also interesting, right? You have fermentation, you have mycelium, you have cultivated, which has just now been given approval to be on sale for the first time ever.
Wow.
And there's just so many things going on in plant-based. And plant-based dairy is the one that hasn't taken a breather. It's done well all along.
Right, absolutely. And we have, I think it's for the first time at the show, we have the plant-based pavilion.
Yeah.
And I know they were just doing a talk on upcycling, food upcycling. I know that's a growing trend. Okay, let's get into something that I've been speaking with a lot of my colleagues here at the Food Institute, other people at the show. Snacks. We are seeing so many snacks. I was just talking to a friend of mine. Popcorn, pretzels, chips, cookies. Give us your take, David. What snacking? It's just huge, right?
Huge. Well, so in a somewhat maturing industry, our top 10 categories don't change very much at all. In fact, the ones in 2022 were the same as the top 10 in 2020. But for the first time ever, chips and salty snacks jumped above cheese and meat to be the number one category. So that just says it all right there.
There you go.
And what you find is the other two categories that moved up within the top 10 are chocolate and confectionery and water. So all three of those are either convenient or indulgent or both. So that's why snacks. I mean, it is everywhere. So and it isn't just one thing, as you mentioned, the chips and pretzels and on down the line. And
it keeps going on and on and on.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it seems like exhibitors, the industry insiders, they're really taking advantage of that. They're I see a lot of variety, right? You see a lot of depth in variety of the products, and better for you. That's a huge thing, right? I mean, so it's not just a pretzel, it's a non-GMO pretzel. It's not just a cookie, but it's low FODMAP cookie. It's healthy. They're doing something for you. Let's get into what about the shelf-stable versus refrigerated goods? Because I know that ready-to-eat, that's also been like a big category, seeing a lot of that at the show. What's the dynamic there?
Yeah, so the three parts in the grocery store, shelf-stable, refrigerated, and frozen, have also been on a roller coaster the last 5 years.
Absolutely, especially frozen.
Yeah, so before the pandemic struck, frozen had a lot of investment from grocery stores. So frozen was growing really well in 2019 and also continued in 2020 because of the investment that retailers put into it. But of course, in 2020, shelf-stable took off because people were stocking their pantries and cramming it full of shelf-stable things.
Exactly.
That tailed off a little bit in 2021. Retailers knew that was going to happen, so they really made sure that in 2021 they were ready for refrigerated to come back. Right? 2020, we saw emptiness around in-store delis and hot food sold in grocery stores. All went away, and even refrigerated foods didn't sell well in 2020 because people were afraid of anything that wasn't hermetically sealed. So 2021 and 2022, refrigerated came back in a big way. This year, a little bit of a surprise to me, and I'm rarely surprised on sales, shelf-stable is growing just like it did in 2020, which makes you think, we're not in a recession, but people are acting like it's a recessionary environment, and they're stocking up on soups and grains and beans and rice and pizza, pasta. So
very interesting.
Very interesting dynamic between areas of the store, for sure.
It's like the consumers know what you're doing. They want to keep you on your toes, David. It's like, refrigerated, shelf-stable, actually.
Everybody here, yes.
All right, so final question, main takeaway of the report, bottom line, what's the most important thing that anyone can take away from this report, in your opinion?
Boy, I'd have to say, honestly, it's how the industry is reacting to inflation, because we've never seen it and never seen it this much, and it has caused people to pull back. Sales are still going up, but the way that consumers are pulling back is that they're buying fewer things. So unit sales have never declined in the history of specialty food. Last year they did. This year they're probably going to decline as well. So there's a lot of upheaval going on, and the biggest takeaway for me is, as we interviewed all of the people within the industry, the two things that came straight to the top were what people can do if you can't manage your top line sales and you can't even necessarily manage your profits that well. You're going to focus on cost of goods sold. So that's a thing you can really focus in on and do something about. The other thing is employees. Everybody discovered that in the pandemic, if you had good employees, they kept your business alive because you were asking so much of them, and now you can't afford to let them go, really, and it's hard to get people in and train. So employees are the lifeblood of businesses, and specialty food companies have really learned that. Other things have to do with pricing architecture. If you're going to survive things like a pandemic or inflation, you've got to sell in more than one channel, more than two channels.
Right.
That's how makers have changed in the last several years, is that they're now savvy to 6 or 7 different channels to sell in, from direct to consumer to your local hardware store might carry things like that. So, just so many things. The other final takeaway is leaning on your community. So specialty food companies do best when they lean on other specialty food companies to share information. So maybe you're sharing space, maybe you're sharing a favorite broker that you have, or maybe you're sharing research that you have, because as some of our interviewees said, that the biggest thing that they get is that they want to tell people that the competitor is big, big candy, big condiment sellers, and all specialty food competitors actually is a rising tide. So you want to deal with your competitors as though it's a frenemy
Yeah.
situation.
I love that. You use that term very well. Keep your friends closer and your enemies closer. I love that. Pricing, inflation, labor. Top takeaways. Always a pleasure. David Lockwood, principal researcher, State of the Industry 2023, State of the Specialty Food Industry report. You can find that online, www.specialtyfood.com. David, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.